state-run program intended to assist the elderly and disabled with basic needs like eating, bathing, getting to the bathroom. It was deemed so poorly managed, as one news report put it, the state could not assure the health and well-being of the people they were supposed to serve. The mismanagement was fatal with heartbreaking and stunning frequency. The state in question, Sarah Palin's Alaska. Our third story in the countdown, never mind Palin's fictitious berserk fantasy of Obama death panels. The former governor of Alaska presided over some virtual death panels of her own. A federal review in June found that Alaska health programs designed to keep people out of nursing homes and other institutions were plagued with bureaucratic problems. The Anchorage Daily News reporting in one 2.5-year stretch, 227 adults already getting services died while waiting for a nurse to reassess their needs. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services banned the state from admitting more patients into those programs until improvements were made. The suspension on admissions to one program has since been lifted, but a ban remains on another Alaska Medicaid program that provides a wider range of services for people with more severe needs. It might be assumed that such a program in any state would have these types of issues, but no, it's just Alaska. It was the only state in the union to be put under a federal moratorium. Meantime, another Republican lashed out against the Palin death panel talk. Senator Johnny Isakson of Georgia, supporter of expanding Medicare's end-of-life planning coverage, speaking with the Washington Post. I just had a phone call, he said, where someone said Sarah Palin's website had talked about the House bill having death panels on it where people would be euthanized. How someone could take an end-of-life directive or a living will as that is nuts. You're putting the authority in the individual rather than the government. I don't know how that got so mixed up. Joining me now from Anchorage, talk radio host and Huffington Post contributor Shannon Moore. Shannon, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
First, to Senator Isakson's point, isn't the reason why things got so mixed up in this health care debate because former Governor Palin might have been registering some guilt over how many people died on her health care watch in her state?
I don't think that Sarah Palin registers guilt. I really don't. There is a very, very long list of whose fault everything has been, whether it's the Johnston families, whether it's the bloggers in Alaska, whether it's, campaign people. It's never her fault. And so I don't think this is part of a registration of that. I think this is really a cry to her base.
Palin would have you believe that the Medicaid system is flawed, but in this particular case, isn't part of the problem, or wasn't at least the part of the problem during a considerable period of time here, the incompetence of her administration, not of some sort of systemic problem with Medicaid?
Isn't it interesting that people keep running for office that keep telling us the government's bad, and then they get in and they prove it? She's a classic case, and she talks about how bad the government is and that bureaucrats are bad, yet she spent a lot of time on the road last year running to be a bureaucrat and, being part of government. She got in and she proved it. And I spent a lot of time today talking to this department. I talked to 4 or 5 different people there, and my understanding is this, that they actually requested funds, they requested more resources, and were denied. All of this in a year of huge surpluses. And, Alaskans already have a permanent fund dividend check that we get from oil royalties. But she put out an additional, over $700 million in just checks that was above and beyond. And so in a time where we had budget surpluses, she didn't choose to fund this department. It wasn't important to her. She's had multiple people quit because they didn't agree with her parental consent bill that she was trying to put through. So, which is a pro-life, I suppose, or you could say anti-choice act. So, in looking at this, I don't know that it was the department's fault. I think they were underfunded, and I did talk to several legislators today who said that there's a very good chance that they're going to open a hearing and find out exactly whose fault this was.
Putting aside the governor's redistribution of wealth, did she pull back on the death panel rhetoric between Friday and Sunday because of this story of her own poor track record on this subject, because that was out there and could get national attention? Were these things interrelated in some way?
Well, someone called me and read me her Facebook entry, which is now how she is putting out any information via Facebook. So they read it to me, and I thought it must be a hoax. I didn't think it was possibly true that she would go as far as say that Obama's health care was, death panels. But she did. And she did pull it back subsequently on Sunday night to a certain extent. And I'm not sure if it was the backlash or what, but, she has this sort of word salad that she uses, sort of Palin speak, that really is like there's a Pavlovian response that happens from her base. And they react and they show up and they shout down. In fact, yesterday I was at a gathering of people for various different reasons in downtown Anchorage, and her Palinistas, as we call them, were out in force with bullhorns shouting down anybody who had anything to say about health care, anything that they had to say about this moratorium, and about the energy surplus or the energy stimulus that was actually overturned yesterday by our legislature.
Well, don't ruin their reasons for living. Don't tell them she resigned. Shannon Moore, radio host, contributor to the Huffington Post. Thank you as always.
My pleasure, Keith.